Good morning to all who came. Appreciate it. It goes all online also. I want to thank Ron, and thank Georgia, Catherine, the folks in the balcony who keep our technical side running. They do a great job. Before I get to the message in particular, I've chosen another reading from the Bible. Unfortunately, I don't have the words to go on the screen, so if you're interested, you may follow along. I had a hard time selecting a verse to go along with this particular sermon. The liturgical calendar has a selection from the book of Romans, which I didn't really like very much, and it didn't really fit with my theme. And I was really having a hard time. And then, quite literally, last Thursday, I believe it was, I was listening to the radio, and the Reverend Holly, who works at a church downtown, I cannot remember the name of the church, did a little message with another reading from the book of Romans. And again, that wasn't exactly my cup of tea, but having been exposed to two readings from Romans within a few days of each other, I invoked Gibbs Rule 39 and decided that I needed to find something in Romans. Now, Romans is a troublesome book for me. There's numerous verses. It's really one of the ones that are used by the haters in the world to justify their anti-homosexual behavior, and there's a lot of other things in there that are just do not fit with my philosophy of what being a Christian and loving Christian it should be. But I read through the book anyway to see if there was something in there that I could redeem and use in this service, and I found the chapter that I'm going to read. It begins in chapter 2. Therefore you have no excuse, O man, whoever you are, when you judge one another. For in passing judgment upon him, you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, are doing the very same things. We know that the judgment of God rightly falls upon those who do those things. But do you suppose, O man, that when you judge those who do such things and yet do them yourself, you will escape the judgment of God? Or do you presume upon the richest and the kindness and the forbearance and patience? Do you not know that God's kindness is meant to lead you to repentance? But by your hand and your impotent heart you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. For he will render to every man according to his works. Let me start by saying that this presentation, this message, contains content drawn from the internet and from social media. And those who are active in this realm are probably familiar with the acronym NSFW, which stands for Not Safe for Work. It's a warning that you shouldn't open something from the internet at the office or where other unsuspecting people can see it, if they might be, or you might be, easily offended. I spoke with Pastor Richard about what I was going to say today, and we kind of joked that some of the content in this sermon, you will be warned, is what I refer to as NSFC, that is not safe for church. He gave me a good piece of advice. He said that what I should think about is, what would my grandma say to anything that I presented in church? And I thought that was good. However, then I started to think about it. I have in my family, not a grandma, but I think previous generations, one who was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, for those who are familiar with that. And I had another one in this probably similar generation who was a avowed suffragette. So thinking what my grandma might say is probably not a very limiting factor. But nonetheless, so a quick explanation of the title of the sermon, which is What I Meme. And for anybody not familiar with what a meme is, the dictionary defines it as a humorous image, video, piece of text, etc., that is copied, often with slight variations, and spread rapidly by internet users. Some examples. Michaela Maroney went from Olympic champion to champion meme. There's the "you had one job" memes, which show all kinds of different pictures of human failure. And my favorite, commonly called "condescending Willie," which has become a universal representation of sarcastic comments. Now, I'd modify the definition of a meme a little bit. It says that these are humorous. And while that might be true sometimes, more often they're a form of editorial expression for political ideas or statements of social issues. And on a positive note, often they're sometimes used to provide affirmation or life advice. Humor may not always be the point. So over the last few years, I've collected these little gems. When stuck in a situation that requires my attendance, but not my attention, like theater rehearsals or Zoom meetings for work or for boards of nonprofit organizations, I'll spend my time on my phone browsing for fun and interesting memes, which I then share with my family and my friends, and now with my congregation. I thought it might be interesting to share some of these kind of as a guidepost for this message. By the way, I lost something. All of these memes that I have were things that were already on my phone. I didn't have to look them up, okay? There was one exception, and here's the one I looked up. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's become kind of a mission of mine that everybody learn this part of sign language. It's very simple. It goes like this. It means help me. Lately there's been a lot of stories of people being saved from abusive relationships by knowing the sign. There's even been TV commercials where people use the sign. Apocryphal or not, I think it's an important effort that everyone understand this and that we might just save some lives if everyone knows this sign. So collecting memes goes along with having a brain full of useless knowledge and trivia. I am pretty good at Jeopardy. You want me on your bar trivia team. And my head's also full of all kinds of obscure cultural references that I'm likely to sprinkle into conversations or sermons at any given time. And no, I don't usually explain. A little background for those who don't know me. My name is Rick Hawley, and I am a sarcasmologist, as I implied earlier. I've been a member of this church since 1967, when my parents moved to Grosse Pointe. I was 8. I was gone for about 13 years for college and first jobs and such, but I've been back here since 1988 and very involved in this church. I've been on many boards and committees over the years, trustees, stewards, deacons, music, pastoral relations, did my turn in the barrel as moderator, been on that side of the sanctuary numerous times as a worship leader, and as the meme says, I've even shared my musical talent a few times. And yes, I will sing later. Let me rephrase that. We will sing later. This is not the first time I've been in this pulpit. My first sermon happened as a senior in high school in 1976. I was part of the annual Youth Sunday program. The subject for that message came from an old TV PSA, or public service announcements for Big Brothers. And I'm not even sure there were Big Sisters back then, but anyway, the ad was an encouragement for people to volunteer as a big brother, which in fact my wife and I did many years later. And the tag for the spot was a young man, maybe 10, 12 years old, who looked longingly into the camera and said, "Think about it, won't you?" And that message resonated with me, not necessarily for Big Brothers, but I spoke of really needing to think about our faith and not just come to church and say and do the same things over and over again. That is to get out of your comfort zone. These were what I perceived most others not doing at the time. The ignorance of youth. The second time I spoke here was during a laity Sunday service in 1991. The subject for that service was the long, strange journey I'd been on for the preceding years. Of course, there were secular activities, college, getting married, first jobs, moving to Florida, starting a family. But then there was the faith journey I'd been on at the same time. I talked about how, after all the ideas and denominations and philosophies and charlatans and hokum that I'd looked at, I concluded that right here where I started just might be the best place for me to be. The third opportunity came in 2006 because Jamie Lee Curtis. I presented a sermon likening the teachings of Christ to libertarianism, with a small L, like me. I opined that Christ had simplified the law to just a few basic principles and really made the requirements for a righteous life very simple. I frankly don't remember the circumstances of why I was the guest speaker that day, but in preparing that sermon, I realized that the three sermons were each 15 years apart: 1976, 1991, and 2006. And I made the statement to pencil me in for 2021. Well, COVID and other things made that not quite a reality, but I'm here today. Again, cultural references that you may not recognize. It's always been a challenge to figure out how to start a speech. Some say tell a joke or provide, and some provide other pieces of advice. And here's a meme from The Princess Bride that I found helpful. Again, it's NSFC perhaps, but you can see what it says. So let's review. Polite greeting, check. My name, check. Personal link, check. Manage expectations. Waiting for the next slide. There we go. Managing expectations. I'm not going to read it out loud. You can read it for yourself. And if you get to the last one and you were wondering, easy to remember that way. I'm sure you didn't expect that the message today would require reading subtitles, if you will, sort of like watching a foreign film. Sorry. Since the purpose of both memes and sermons, in my mind, is to make you think a little, let's just take a little break and ponder these for a moment. How many could you hear? So you just heard me say that the previous sermon that I gave was on Christ the Libertarian. And if you did, you might reasonably expect some political content in this sermon. Not so much. What I will say is that aspects of our current culture I find simply wrong or evil. Or if I were a fundamentalist preacher like Reverend Holly, they are the work of the devil. And we're literally destroying ourselves and our society. Among these things are wokeness, which I call political correctness, is carried too far. The whole cancel culture is carried too far. The inability of the average person to take a joke, that's a problem. The incredulous and angry responses we get to any image or meme or different opinion than ours. Thought that's based on political ideology instead of reason and love. Rejection of scientific realities. The loss or maybe the expulsion of God from our lives. These are problems. I could go on and on talking about things of that nature. I could discuss in depth these ideas or other current political situations or social issues or whatever. But when I do, I always ask the question, first posed many, many years ago, what would Jesus do? Sorry, I don't have a meme for that one. This catchphrase was hugely popular some years ago on bracelets and t-shirts and pins and caps, and maybe even before memes were a thing. And as trite as it might sound today, what would Jesus do is still the critical question to our lives. Now, I could discuss all these different things that I think are wrong, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to step into that minefield. I'm living as dangerously as I dare to right now with all this NSFC stuff, more of which I warn you is coming up later. So instead, as promised, it's time for us to sing together. So I'd like to do a song of great social and political import. It goes like this. Sing along with me if you would. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? My friends all drive Porsches. I must make amends. Worked hard all my lifetime, no help from my friends. So, oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? You guys remember this, don't you? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV? Dialing $4 is trying to find me. I wait for delivery each day until 3. So, oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? I'm counting on you, Lord. Please don't let me down. Prove that you love me and buy the next round. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? My friends all drive Porsches. I must make amends. Worked hard all my lifetime, no help from my friends. So, oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? Not sure why I chose that other than it's one of my favorites from a long time ago, and it's a little irreverent, and I love it. Sorry, I fibbed a little before. I had to sneak in some political content in while we were singing that song. They were looking at the memes that went along with the lyrics. I don't see any. I do see some daggers in the congregation. I don't see any pitchforks or lightning just yet, so I guess we can go on. I want to tell you a true story of something that happened to my daughter just a week or so ago. To provide a little context for those who don't know me, I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter is married, and they've blessed me with 2 amazing grandchildren, and I can show you pictures. They live up in Shelby, and she is a strong, independent, take no crap from anyone person. My son is my youngest. He and his girlfriend, soon to be fiance, just bought a house together in Warren. They've blessed me with an amazing grand dog. He's a Marine Corps veteran, and he's a strong, independent, take no crap from anyone person. My middle daughter lives in Seattle. She has a degree in social work. She works as a nonprofit, and I lovingly refer to her as my bleeding heart. She's the family vegan. She's blessed me with alternative perspective. She's a strong, independent person, but more easily intimidated by bullies than her siblings. This is her story. She was at the big Pride rally in Seattle just a week or so ago. I will note that she's not a lesbian, but a big supporter of LGBT rights, which everyone in our family is. And as you might expect, there were dimwit protesters at this rally. And one was particularly loud and intimidating, carrying a sign that said something like, "Tell me why you're not going to hell." Now, my daughter was uncomfortable and chose, probably wisely, not to engage this person. Had I been there, I'm not sure I would have shown the same sense or restraint. I hope I would have confronted that person and answered him very directly. We're not going to hell because we are children of God, and God does not make mistakes. We are results of his creation and perfect in his eyes. Further, I hope I would have been thought to add to that he, the protester, was ignoring the teachings of Christ, the libertarian, to love one another, to have compassion for one another, even if we disagree with them. And so he, the protester, was probably in more peril of going to hell than anyone participating in the protest, or in the rally, I should say. I hope I would have said that. Unfortunately, in the face of ignorance and idiocy, I tend to become very sarcastic and snarky. So what I probably would have come out with my mouth was something like this. Interestingly, my daughter is part of the generation that will say they are spiritual but not religious. She doesn't go to church, she doesn't participate in organized religion. But I suspect that she demonstrated that day much more Christian response than I ever could have in the face of that sort of thing. Her capacity for wisdom and forbearance and grace, by simply ignoring the idiot, is remarkable. A true embodiment of what would Jesus do? What would you do? In closing, a couple recent memes that I found that are the favorites. My granddaughter will be 3 years old in a couple of weeks, and I've learned so much from interacting with her, it's amazing. And then on the second one, the wisdom of children, whether the stories shown in these memes are true or not, they present a wisdom which is beyond my years from little children. And lastly, just to leave you with something to think about, a couple more. The one about bingo just drove me crazy when I saw it. Anyway, I feel like we're failing in many ways in our modern society. Many things are increasingly lacking, or we're losing them. Things are dragging us down. We're becoming less civil and less of everything that we strive to be. All of this is preventing us from being our best selves, and our best selves as a society, as a congregation, as a world. It's increasingly difficult to be optimistic about the future. But I try to remember one word that has always been a guiding principle in my life, and that word is grace. Grace has always been one of my favorite words. It's an amazing and powerful word. It's an amazing, powerful concept and feeling if you can express grace in everything that you do. Grace embodies all the tolerance and love and understanding we really need to survive and thrive as we go forward. Grace is the key to everything. Let the cars go.